Petsitting Pretty by Claire Cotter, Chapter 1. Now then, let me introduce you to the terrible twosome. This is George and Gulliver, Estelle declares proudly as she sashays her way through the spacious lounge. I stand sheepishly at the doorway, cautiously scanning the room before I enter. Well, don't be shy, dear. Come and say hello. I've warned them to be on their very best behaviour, so they won't bite you. Well, at least not today anyway. Estelle beckons me with swinging arms as she grins at me with devilish delight. Even though she's 80-something, she has a look of a mischievous schoolgirl. I nod submissively and follow her into the large room. It has a beautiful old-fashioned fireplace in the centre, several swanky armchairs dotted around, an expensive-looking glass table in the centre, and the biggest sofa I've ever seen in my life along the back wall. I stand in the middle of the room like a lemon, waiting to be introduced to George and Gulliver, as there is nobody else in here apart from me and Estelle. I am not actually expecting George and Gulliver to be people, as I know that Estelle lives on her own, as I have come to her delightful cottage named Pheasant's Cry to pet sit for her cat and dog while she goes away for a month visiting family abroad. I only met Estelle 5 minutes ago, after I rattled her charming gold handbell outside the front door, which I had to eyeball suspiciously for several moments as to whether it was purely ornamental. I had picked up straight away that Estelle was more than a bit eccentric when I had started to apologise for being late at the door, as I had never been to this little village in Oxfordshire known as Blissham before. I am ashamed to admit, but I hardly ever leave London, as I never see the point. Even just going into the suburbs of Greater London usually gives me a mild panic attack. Everywhere outside of the city just seems dead. That was one of the reasons for taking this pet sit, to go outside of my comfort zone, to spend time with myself without having constant stimulation and distractions. That, and the fact that the guy I had been living with for the past 2 years in his flat in North London decided to tell me he was leaving me for Zara, his co-worker, who he had told me numerous times he didn't find remotely attractive. I didn't relish the thought of having to go straight into a flat share with strangers, or moving back in with my parents, who lived in the harrowing suburbs of Greater London. I had decided to take some time off work and disappear for a while. Pet sitting seemed the perfect solution to make some money while on holiday and get to stay somewhere free of bills. Nagbag tried to take you elsewhere, did she? Estelle had challenged. Sorry, who? I had tried to hide my puzzlement. I hate being caught out in confusion. It makes me feel helpless and stupid. Nagbag, you know, the one that shouts all the directions at you and keeps on at you when you don't listen, Estelle had continued. Oh, yes, Nagbag, as in sat-nav. I'm with you. Yes, she likes to think she knows best, doesn't she? I beamed wildly while nodding ferociously in agreement with her. I had then followed Estelle into a lavishly stylish home. I was a bit worried about living in someone else's house for a whole month, especially when the agency said Estelle was elderly. I was expecting a hoarder's paradise with unnerving stains and swirls of caramels and browns in the carpet, an avocado-coloured bathroom with a lingering smell of old people throughout the place. But this place is plush. It still retains a lot of the original character and features of a cottage, but it has been updated to the highest modern standard, pastel colourings and stylish furniture with a light, airy feel throughout. Would you like a tea or coffee? Estelle had asked as I followed her into the kitchen and plonked myself at the breakfast bar. Oh, coffee would be amazing, I had cooed, as I could almost taste the divine liquid that I hadn't had time to drink before I had left. Oh, sorry, dear, I don't have coffee. Estelle screwed her face up at me. Oh, sorry, I thought you said... I had looked confused as I swung the bar stool I was sat in from side to side. Yes, I know I did. Estelle slapped her hand in front of me. It's just a turn of phrase I can't seem to get out of. Would you like tea or coffee? Doesn't sound right to just say tea, does it? But alas, tea is all I have, I'm afraid. Estelle had gazed at me with wide, maniacal eyes. Then tea it is, no worries at all, I had smiled reassuringly at her, though utterly crushed inside. The village shop will stock some, dear. It's just across the road, Estelle had added, seeming to sense my dissatisfaction. I have most other things here. You must help yourself to anything you want, apart from my French fancies. Estelle's tone had flipped sharply. Someone in here keeps eating them, and it isn't me. At first I thought it was Ray, but he assured me it wasn't him. I was about to ask who Ray was, but Estelle carried on ranting about the French fancies. Thank you, that is very kind, Estelle, and don't worry, I won't touch the French fancies. I smiled sweetly at her as I tried to calm her. She had smiled warmly back. Oh, and I have left you some cash in this pot, in case you need anything. Estelle had given me what I felt at the time was a guilty smile. I glanced eagerly around the lounge to see if I can spot a moggy sitting in the window, tucked behind the curtain, being true to its antisocial nature, or a small dog sleeping under the colossal cream sofa. Well, dear, what do you think of Gulliver? Do you like him? Estelle beams at me. And Gulliver is? I bite my lip anxiously, as I'm not sure I want to know who Gulliver is. This is Gulliver, silly Billy. Can you not tell? Estelle proudly displays her arms out widely in front of the humongous cream sofa, which would have looked absolutely daft in a normal-sized room. Oh, yes, of course, I relax. Although I understand this is nutty behaviour, I am relieved she doesn't want me to house-sit for her invisible pets. Yes, he's certainly a big boy, isn't he? I nodded agreeably. Yes, hence the name. He is huge, but when you sit on him, you are tiny. Just like he was on his famous adventures. Go on then, give him a go, dear. Estelle gestures exuberantly to me to sit down on Gulliver. I have to practically jump on top of Gulliver to sit down on him as he is so tall. Oh, he's really comfy, I shriek, as I sink into Gulliver's soft cushioning. Yes, he is, dear. I knew you'd like him. He likes you too, Estelle nods and winks at me. How can you tell? I am starting to humour Estelle now. I can cope with someone naming inanimate objects in their house. It's not the worst thing in the world. He'd eject you if he didn't, Estelle replies sternly. I consider for a split second that Estelle is not crazy and her sofa really is alive, then picture myself being abruptly ejected with warp speed into the air and through the roof. And George? I ask cordially. George is right there, dear. Estelle motions to the remote control sitting on Gulliver's arm. They are the best of friends, you know, dear. Estelle shakes her head. Yes, I can see that. They obviously spend a lot of time together, I concur, as I pick up George. Oh, here is Riddance, Estelle cried suddenly, making me jump, as a sleek, lithe black cat with yellow eyes saunters into the lounge. Hello, Riddance, I squeak, as I desperately edge myself out of Gulliver to greet the feline. Riddance looks me up and down and decides I am not worthy to stroke her yet, and jumps straight onto the windowsill and starts licking her paws. I've never heard that name for a cat before. Did you name her Estelle? Yes, I rescued her from the local animal sanctuary 6 years ago, and when I was taking her away, she just looked at me and then at the shelter, and it felt like she was saying, good riddance. So there you go, that's how I picked it. And you have a dog too? Yes, Fergus, but he's out at the moment with Jenny the dog walker. He'll be back later on, as it's easier if I have already left, as he makes a huge fuss if he sees me leave him.